Warhammer is a universe where people fight wars using hammers. Okay, not really. Warhammer 40k is a massive, bombastic universe in the grimdark future of the 40th millennium where humanity is fighting wars on an epic scale on multiple fronts against all sorts of horrors. Space orcs, space elves, literal demons from hell, humans corrupted by literal demons from hell, the Zerg, and also the Tau. Warhammer got its start as a tabletop game, and at the core it still is. Imagine chess but more complex, where two players bring out their hand-painted armies of miniatures and battle it out on a large board. It's a cool experience at game stores or game bars where you get to meet people, socialize, and show off your cool miniatures. Today, however, the Warhammer IP has already outgrown its tabletop niche and now includes ultra-popular AAA game titles such as the latest Space Marine 2, with more than 2 million copies sold worldwide. But the Warhammer IP has not been without its controversies. We now have gamer-gators accusing the parent company Games Workshop of turning the game woke by introducing into it the most absurd creatures of all: women. No, wait, it's actually even more ridiculous. Gamer-gators are mad that Games Workshop changed the lore of one of the factions that no one plays or cares about by saying that some of its soldiers can be women. If you want to, I mean, it's you assembling the miniatures, you can decide what head you put on them. And this resulted in a global outrage among people who have never touched a Warhammer miniature, or a woman. That's it, Games Workshop. I could suspend my disbelief for space orcs, space elves, and hell in space run by space demons, but women? If women are real, how come I never touched one? On the other hand, opposite to the gamer-gators, we have an increasing number of voices saying that Warhammer 40k is starting to become problematic by turning from a satire of fascism into a celebration of it, especially with the latest Space Marine 2 game. Gamer-gators counter this by accusing such critics of overreaction. It's just a game, you're taking it way too seriously, nobody wants to be a literal space Nazi, you guys need to chill the fuck out, they say. So what's going on here? Do gamer-gators have a point? Is Warhammer turning woke? Or are the critics correct here, and Warhammer is indeed turning into a celebration of fascism? To answer this question, we need to talk about Starship Troopers, the subject of much online discussion as of late. Now, please hold that thought for a moment and let me pay some bills. You might have noticed that the world is kind of going insane at the moment, with Trump nominating a pro-Putin grifter as the director of US National Intelligence and a vaccine denier as Secretary of Health. The political scene could not be more tense and uncertain, and this brings with it a steady growth of politically motivated online harassment, among others. Keeping your personal data to yourself is more important than ever, and Delete Me, the sponsor of today's video, is specializing in just that. Once you tell them what to remove, they'll scan hundreds of data broker websites and request the removal of sensitive data about you, helping you reduce your digital footprint. In a week, they'll send you a privacy report where they will list out what sort of data they found and got removed. Delete Me will rescan those websites later to make sure your data doesn't surface somewhere else. You can't always control whether you become a target through your personal data, whether for theft, harassment, or worse. But you can definitely make it much harder for anyone to even try, by taking a proactive approach to the protection and removal of your personal data. And the easiest way to do that is with Delete Me. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans by going to joindeleteme.com/adam20 and use the promo code adam20 during checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/adam20, promo code adam20. Thank you for checking out Delete Me. Starship Troopers is in many ways the predecessor of Warhammer, being one of the trailblazers of hard science fiction. Its setting is also similar to Warhammer's. We have a sort of centralized, militaristic human empire called the Terran Federation, battling it out with various alien species, including giant space bugs. Much like Warhammer, Starship Troopers grew out of an original niche IP. With Warhammer 40k, it was the tabletop game. With Starship Troopers, it was a book which later got adapted into series, movies, and games, making the IP transition from niche to the relative mainstream. Now, tabletop Warhammer is very different from video game Warhammer, Space Marine 2 in particular. And in the same way, there is a big difference between Starship Troopers, the book, and Starship Troopers, the movie. The 1997 movie, which was at the center of that god-awful discourse. The Starship Troopers book is rather jingoistic. Some people called it fascist literature, but I don't really agree with that label. The book is militaristic, obsessed with toughness and masculinity, heroism and honor, but it's otherwise not covert fascist propaganda or anything. It was written by a former soldier at the height of the Red Scare and McCarthyism in the 1950s. So as far as I can see, Starship Troopers is really a product of its time. It's still very right-wing, idolizes the military. In fact, in that world, the only way to gain full rights as a citizen is through military service and so on. But is it fascist? No, it's just 1950s right-wing and jingoistic. Imagine a sci-fi universe created by an ex-military boomer who has a Clint Eastwood profile picture on Facebook and who can't shut up about how back in his day everyone worked 26-hour workdays, 10 days a week, and no one complained, as opposed to the weak and entitled generation today. Military service classes should be compulsory to teach these soy latte drinking weaklings some discipline. But in person, the guy is nice to you and always offers you beer when you come over. That's the authorial context of the Starship Troopers book, basically. Now keep in mind, while the book itself isn't fascistic, the Terran Federation in it kind of is. And the values of the 1997 Starship Troopers movie are, in many ways, the opposite of the books. The director, Paul Verhoeven, grew up during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands and didn't really like fascist, hyper-militaristic ideologies for obvious reasons. So he proceeded to subvert our expectations. Not with medieval anti-air railguns firing tungsten rounds at Mach 5, but by turning the Terran Federation, the Starship Troopers, into a satire of jingoism and fascism. While the book depicts the Terran Federation's campaign against the bugs as a heroic struggle, the movie portrays it as a hopeless war started on false pretenses, fought by a bunch of propaganda-addled macho idiots marching into certain death, where instead of heroic acts, glorious sacrifices, and cinematic last stands, you just get torn apart by giant bugs. I mean, the whole reason for the war is that supposedly bugs pulled the Javier Milei and destroyed Buenos Aires by launching an asteroid from a different solar system towards Earth. If anyone is getting Iraq War, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction vibes, yeah, you should. The bugs' home system is tens of thousands of light years away. Even if they somehow managed to precisely hit Earth from such a distance, the asteroid would have taken millions of years to get there. So no, the bugs could not have done it. The whole asteroid business also begs the question, if the bugs can pull that off, why don't they keep doing it once humans attack them? Because it's all bullshit. The asteroid was an accident at best and a false flag operation at worst that got blamed on the bugs to keep the war machine and thus the military-industrial complex occupied. In the end, however, all humans accomplish is getting a bunch of soldiers murdered. By the end of the movie, we see literal child soldiers deployed as the Terran Federation is running out of regular troops. And it's not like the bugs are a threat to humanity. They aren't like the Tyranids, actively trying to eat humanity. The bugs are on the other side of the galaxy and generally don't bother you unless you bother them first, which humans did by settling on the bugs' home planet. During the closing scene of the Starship Troopers movie, the soldiers capture a brain bug, the bug's equivalent of a command and control vehicle, basically. In this scene, Neil Patrick Harris reads the brain bug's emotions and loudly proclaims it's afraid to the soldiers around him, after which everyone erupts in cheers and the whole scene is played off seemingly as the glorious ending of a righteous military campaign. Except it's not, and the movie goes to great lengths showing you why in the 2 hours preceding this scene. First off, as I've said, it was the humans who attacked first. The bugs did not start this conflict. They were attacked based on false pretenses and they decimated the humans for it. I mean, if the literal child soldiers by the end aren't indication enough, I don't know what to tell you. Hundreds of thousands of human deaths for no reason. That end scene with the brain bug is basically one massive cope by the Terran Federation. The director even added a nice little touch. When the bug starts jittering out of fear, the soldiers quickly back away from it. This is not a victory. You captured what is basically a single command and control vehicle at the end of your campaign that cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's like when the other Federation, the Russian one, exhibits a captured Abrams on Red Square. Yeah, you got that one, congrats, but you also lost more than 18,000 pieces of heavy equipment in Ukraine. And it's just the visually confirmed losses, not to mention your casualties. Anyway, the Starship Troopers movie is very clear about it being a satire. The discourse that erupted around it, however, was truly mind-boggling. On one side, you had people with the reasonable take. Everything that happened to humans is basically their fault, the war with the bugs was completely unnecessary, and the Terran Federation is a crazy, jingoistic fascist empire. I mean, the director put Neil Patrick Harris in a literal SS uniform. The message is very clear. Also, the brain bug scene is followed up by a propaganda video in which people gleefully tortured the brain bug, so there's that too. But some disagreed with this assessment. A lot of people legitimately did not understand how anyone could take the side of the bugs, empathize with the bugs even, when all the Terran Federation characters are attractive and the bugs are disgusting. And I mean, that's the whole point? The way you instinctively feel about the bugs is how a white supremacist feels about blacks or how a Nazi feels about Jews. Revolting freaks to be crushed under their boots. Not coincidentally, this is often how Jews were depicted by Nazi propaganda. Disgusting insects to be purged from the face of Earth. The movie essentially challenges you to take the side of the group you were conditioned to hate. And oh boy, did many people fail this test. The discourse essentially became an indicator of who would fall for Nazi propaganda, where all the Aryan Germans are depicted as tall, strong and beautiful, and all the supposed subhumans as revolting freaks. With that, Starship Troopers gave us a very important revelation about the importance of aesthetics. If an otherwise horrible faction is depicted as badass and handsome in an IP, some people will start idolizing them and co-opt their visuals, no matter how monstrous the faction is or how much satire you heap on. And this brings us to Warhammer 40k. Let's consider its opening paragraphs. It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods and the master of a million worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass, writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day 40k so that he may never truly die. Vast armies give battle in his name on uncounted worlds, but for all their multitudes, they are barely enough to hold off the ever-present threat from aliens, heretics, mutants, and worse. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim dark future there is only war. There is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter and the laughter of thirsting gods. The 40k universe is a rough place. It's basically war and suffering turned up to a ridiculous level, and it kinda works. Warhammer 40k manages to straddle the line between epic and silly, nailing the perfect ratio of the two. And this works really well for the board game. You both bring out your armies you spent 200 plus hours painting, one of you fields Chaos Marines, the other Astra Militarum, and you duke it out in this silly but epic setting, having lots of fun in the process. This over-the-top horrifying universe is a great niche for tabletop games played by nerds, including yours truly. But what if you want to make a universally appealing AAA video game? How do you implement this idea that everything in the grimdark future is horrible, the soldiers are brainwashed drones dying for nothing, and that the wars you fight are completely hopeless, and all of you are essentially doomed? How do you make an enjoyable AAA game around these ideas? Games Workshop thought long and hard and decided that they'll just kind of forget about most of the grimdark stuff. The Space Marine games, while containing hints of the absurdity of the Imperium, are for the most part made to make the player feel like a cool, epic, badass war hero soldier mowing down thousands of enemies without breaking a sweat. And with that, Games Workshop has made the biggest mistake possible when it comes to depicting fascists. They made them appear cool and badass. And yes, Space Marines are fascists. They're turbo space Nazis who will turn you into minced meat if you say something they deem heretical. Atrocities, purges and genocides are just par for the course for them. If your service to the Imperium means mowing down 10,000 civilians because there might be heretics among them, so be it. You're murdering women and children without any second thought or remorse because you are a mindless drone bred for combat, and that's just what it's like to live under the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. If you doubt me, I invite you to check out the episode in the Garden of Ghosts from the Hammer and Bolter series, where we are treated to a scene of a purged Forge world. No wait, that's the Adeptus Mechanicus thing, alright. Craft World. That's a giant space habitat basically, where the Eldari, the space elves, live. Home to millions at minimum. Well, the noble Ultramarines massacred the entire Forge world, murdering untold thousands of men, women and children. Because they were Xenos, therefore degenerate, therefore worthy of death. Shout out to Purity Seal for this lore tip, by the way. You can find his channel under @ThePuritySeal. In popular first-person shooters, however, such things cannot be depicted because your game would be banned worldwide. A Warhammer 40k shooter game true to the lore would be a war crime simulator.
Remember, no Russian.
And it would just be weird playing as a psychotic, murderous maniac committing crimes against humanity for 8 hours without any self-awareness or remorse. Actually that sounds like super fun and— wait, I'm sorry, this video is for people 13 and above. Who let these children in here? But I love playing as an unrepentant murderous psycho. Yeah, try playing Mass Effect as a renegade. Don't believe me? Apparently, according to Mass Effect player stats, 92% of players played as Paragon and only 8% as Renegade. Most people just don't want to be an asshole, not even in video games. But even if a Warhammer shooter was true to form and the player was made to feel like a disposable cog in a purposeless murder machine tasked with the occasional genocide, there are people who would love that and would absolutely play that game. I get that. But if you're making a game, you want to appeal to the widest audience possible, not just to people on terror watch lists. And Space Marine 2, the latest Warhammer 40k game, ended up doing the former, choosing appeal over what I would call honesty about its universe. You're not a mindless, psychotic drone killing in the name of a doomed fascist empire, but a noble, heroic warrior protecting your home from freaks and degenerates. The overt satire is basically gone because it had to be. There are allusions to the Imperium being bad, but not nearly overt enough. A Warhammer 40k true to form would be like a version of Modern Warfare where every second mission is no Russian, only even more bloody and deranged. But if anyone released a game like that, most countries wouldn't even let them publish it. Keep in mind, by the way, that I do like Space Marine 2 and I do think it's a good game. Just before anyone would start yelling at me how the game isn't bad actually. I agree, it's a good game, it's cool and epic and I like it. But there are overarching issues with it, which we're currently discussing. Now, the reason why the Warhammer 40k books and tabletop games are allowed to get away with containing atrocities while video games aren't is because in the game you would get to act out said atrocities. At the very least, we would get vivid depictions of them. You don't just read about, say, Space Marines murdering 10,000 women and children, or you don't just play with miniatures of a Space Marine faction, which according to the lore once murdered 10,000 women and children. Nope, this is an interactive video game where you are a Space Marine and congratulations Congratulations, your next mission is to purge a civilian slum of 10,000 where the presence of heretics is suspected. Here's your chainsword and plasma incinerator, good luck. And then you get dropped onto the map with a counter appearing on your screen standing at 0 out of 10,000. Nobody would want to play that game, and those who even bothered to try wouldn't have fun playing it if the game was even legal to distribute, even though such a game would fit perfectly into the Warhammer 40k universe. Such is life under the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable in the grimdark future. And that's just what they often do to fellow humans. Sentient, non-human civilians, even if not hostile, usually just get instantly murdered or worked to death as slaves. So Games Workshop had to take a different approach with their AAA game. For the sake of broad appeal, they had to gracefully sideline the unspeakable evil and cruelty of the Imperium. You're not committing atrocities, genocides, and other war crimes. Instead, you're fighting an endless horde of Tyranids, insectoid space alien predators, which threaten to overwhelm everything. In contrast to the bugs in the Starship Troopers movie, Tyranids are not the victims of aggression. Their singular goal is to devour absolutely everything. They are a force of nature, basically, and there is nothing morally wrong with killing them. The other enemy faction appearing in Space Marine 2 are the Forces of Chaos, who are just evil. Once again, nothing wrong with killing them. So your character, Titus of the Ultramarines, is doing the good thing, really. He's a protagonist. He's also a brainwashed space Nazi psychopath, prepared to commit even the most heinous atrocities without a hint of doubt should his masters command him. But let's not portray that, because that would be a downer for the average player. Therefore, in Space Marine 2, Titus is mostly portrayed as a selfless war hero instead. And I know that there is a bit more nuance to the story and the character, especially in light of the previous game, but that unfortunately doesn't matter. That's stuff for lore wonks, not your average player who might not even have played the previous game. The nuance is lost on them. And because of this, due to the Satire taking a backseat, we have lunatic space Nazis made to look like heroes, tirelessly fighting against a tidal wave of freaks that threaten to destroy their glorious civilization. Which is exactly how, say, white nationalists think of themselves, isn't it? The brave champions protecting white civilization from an onslaught of swarthy subhumans who would destroy all they've built. And since the video games have an overwhelming cultural influence compared to the books or the tabletop, the game's portrayal of Warhammer 40k becomes dominant in popular culture. Sort of like how the average person thinks of Superman as an unfeeling alien god. That's because those god-awful Snyder movies depicted him as such. Meanwhile, in the comics, he's this cool and friendly guy. I believe Cosmonaut Variety Hour put it best, and I'm paraphrasing, in the movies, Clark Kent is the mask worn by Superman, but in reality, Superman is the mask worn by Clark Kent. But due to the movie's overwhelming cultural influence over the comics, movie Superman becomes the cultural standard. Same with Warhammer 40k. The ultra-popular games will be the ones dictating the IP's public perception, not the niche books or the tabletop game. Unsurprisingly, the far-right began co-opting Warhammer 40k already a few years ago, God Emperor Trump being the most obvious example. Also God Emperor Putin, go figure. Now, far-right fans of Warhammer don't actually play the tabletop game, so you won't be meeting them in real life. Online though, Warhammer 40k communities are often literal cancer, with people unironically parroting the fascist propaganda of the Imperium. Burn the heretics, kill the mutants, purge the unclean. It is better to die for the Emperor rather than to live for yourself. An open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded. Killed lots of Xenos and got coin for the Emperor. Here's this image depicting an Imperium guardsman blowing himself up with an Eldari, basically a space elf, titled The Emperor Protects, with 1.9 thousand likes. The soldier is glad to die for the Emperor and believes that he saved him by letting him die in war. He's been brainwashed that hard. And the comments next to the image are of a similar vein. Approved. When I'm gone, I'll meet the God Emperor, but you Xeno scum, the only god you'll meet is the Dark God, or whatever that is. Cadia stands for Cadia. Cadia is a fortress world most famous for doing the opposite of standing, by the way. There are also common image replies, most of which call for murdering someone, usually the post-author, or non-humans in general, called Xenos. Not just the evil, aggressive ones. No, literally everyone, including sentient Xenos and their civilians who would be otherwise neutral or even friendly. Just kill them all. I've also seen plenty of Warhammer memes about interracial cuckoldry, which is something far-right people online are absolutely obsessed with. Don't look it up, trust me. Now, let's stop here for a moment. Am I not taking this a bit too seriously, pointing at obvious memes and jokes below posts and pretending they're serious? I do realize these memes and replies are jokes, but often they also aren't. Now, hold on, what the hell do I mean by that? How can one thing be two opposite things at the same time? I personally call such memes and jokes Schrödinger's shitpost. They are both a joke and not a joke at the same time. The meme exists in an ideological superposition until someone engages with it. So suppose someone posts a far-right adjacent meme like this, the Kekistani flag, which is a recolored Nazi Wehrmacht flag, also commonly wielded by neo-Nazi pro protesters. But here, it's just an edgy joke, you see. Or is it? If the response is negative, say if someone replies with, "Dude, what the fuck is this?" then oh, it's just a joke, it's just a meme, lamau, don't take it seriously. But if the response is positive, like, "Heh, my fellow red-pilled Kakistani brother whom the eco science elites couldn't brainwash," then often the meme is suddenly not a joke. Ha, I know, right? Oy vey. And it's not like the person who posted the Kakistani flag is pretending either way. This is the funny part. Such people legitimately don't know what their intent is with the meme they post. Is it just an edgy joke or is it serious? It depends on the meme's public reception. Of course, not all Warhammer memes are like that, but quite a few of them are. I can tell you a percentage here. So far, I could only determine that a non-trivial number of them exist and that such Schrödinger's shitposts are part of the far-right infiltration and co-opting of Warhammer 40k. It provides a nice little grey zone where you can keep dog whistling or posting what are essentially Nazi memes, only it's Warhammer 40k, so normies will think nothing of it. Far-right infiltration of 40k is such a recurring problem that Games Workshop had to issue multiple statements already stating that Warhammer is for everyone, it is not based on hate, it is satire, and that far-right people should fuck off from the hobby, basically. So that's nice. But at the same time, Games Workshop is commissioning video games that neglect the satire in favor of a broader appeal, where the hero, who belongs to a literal superior race, selflessly protects his civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates. And this is seen by far-right people who, in their own imaginations, are heroes who belong to a superior race, selflessly protecting their civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates. And so they identify with Warhammer 40k. They are drawn to Warhammer 40k content. They co-opt the aesthetics of Warhammer 40k. No matter how many statements Games Workshop makes, no matter how much they insist on 40k being satire, as long as the ultra-popular games make the Imperium look cool and badass, righteous even, the far-right will inevitably stay in its orbit and try to co-opt it. This is why Warhammer 40k, in my opinion, is doomed to always have far-right hanger-ons, unless they take the lore into a different direction. And I'm not quite sure how to do that while also preserving the grimdark setting, which is one of the main appeals of the IP. I do have some ideas here though. I think what would help is getting more left-leaning people into the hobby. Also, Games Workshop could add more diversity to the Imperium just to make the Chuds angry. Female Space Marines? Hell yeah. Female Adeptus Custodes? Naturally. Adopt us custodes. Also, add more skin colors. The ensuing outrage will basically be free advertising, and those who are put off by that, you don't want them in the hobby anyway. Do you have some more ideas? Feel free to share them in the comments. Normally I don't read them, but this time I'm genuinely interested and will go over them at least once. In the meantime, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, consider becoming a patron or a channel member here on YouTube. And I'll be seeing you next time.